All right, welcome everyone. Holding by the book of Leviticus, chapter 17. Again, want to welcome everyone. Holding by the book of Leviticus, chapter 18. Let's make sure everyone's paying attention here. We are in book of Leviticus, chapter 18. We are in the second verse. Spoke whatever a few weeks back because we didn't have class last week. Spoke about what it means. I am the eternal your God. Right? Torah says, verse 2, Daber el b'nei Yisrael, Amart alehem, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Say to them, say to the children of Israel, right? God spoke to Moses, saying, first verse, right? Speaks to the children of Israel, saying that I am the Lord your God. Right? So we talked about the idea that God is king, and pointing out that I gave the Torah on Mount Sinai, so therefore you have to accept my decrees. And there was that even though the days of Ezra, Rashi says, they would ultimately revolt against him because they, people weren't so happy with family purity laws and things that were, or forbidden relationships, right? Let's say. And Rashi says, you have to understand very well, God is the one who imposes this decree upon you, right? That's what Rashi says. We saw that Ibn Ezra, right? And Ibn Ezra said that the condition, right? That's how we got into this whole discussion. On the Torah says, "Over ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am the Lord your God." So Ibn Ezra said, "There's a condition, right? What's the condition? The condition is that you're going to keep my decrees. And that's what's going to make me the Lord your God, right? I'm the Lord your God who gave you these decrees. You accept these decrees, right? That is the condition. So we spoke out the idea that God can be king, seemingly, even without this. Even though God says, I'm the Lord your God, etc. And I gave you these decrees. Well, in order to be a king in general, you need subjects. You need people to keep your decrees, right? But God doesn't. God didn't need to create man, right? There was a difference of opinion between the house of Hill and the house of Shammai for 2.5 years. The Gemara says whether it's a good thing to create man, a bad thing to create man, right? And in the end, they came to the conclusion it wasn't a good thing necessarily to make man. Nonetheless, God created man. We have to look into our actions, right? That is where we spoke about that quite a bit. Now comes on the Ramban. Nachmanides over here, and Nachmanides says that there's a warning. What's the warning over here? Because we're going to see in the third verse. We're going to get there probably for a number of weeks. But in the third verse, it says, like, the actions of the people of Egypt that you dwell amongst, do not go after their actions, right? And the actions of the people of Canaan that I brought you out from there, don't go in their way. Now, what's that talking about? That is talking about a warning about forbidden relationships, right? And that's this chapter, for the most of the chapter, is going to go into detail of forbidden relationships. So whatever, we'll get there. So here the Ramban says, what do I have? I have a warning. I have a warning against forbidden relationships. And guess who it applies to? Right? Says the Ramban, it's going to apply to everybody, right? To all Jews, the entire Jewish nation, and it's not just for Kohanim. Now, a person might have thought, right, the book of Leviticus, right? A lot of the book of Leviticus has to do with what? Sacrifices. Who makes the sacrifices? Right? Who does them? The Kohanim. So you might say, these laws, these forbidden relationships, only apply to Kohanim. Comes on the Ramban and says, no, don't make such a mistake. He says this warning of forbidden relationships is for the entire Jewish people, not specifically just for Kohanim. There are certain things specifically for Kohanim, very good. Nonetheless, these laws are for the sake of everybody, and everybody's included. And that's why it says, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. That's why it says, I'm the Lord your God. Right? The same reason the Torah says in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 2. Right? We'll read that in a couple of weeks. And that is that by the Ten Commandments, right? By the Bereshit Moshe Lemor, that's Exodus chapter 20, verse 1. It says, the Be'er B'nai Yisrael ve'amarta lehem ani Hashem Elokeichem. Say over there, or it says over there, tell the Jewish people, I'm the Lord your God. How do I know? I took you out of Egypt, took you out of the house of bondage. So just like over there, it starts Ani Hashem Elokeichem, so too over here, right? Similar thing, right? And meaning that everybody is included, right? Everybody's included in the Ten Commandments. Don't steal, don't commit adultery, right? Don't covet, keep Shabbos, honor your parents. All these laws apply to who? The Jews. So the entire Jewish nation. We're not singling out the Kohanim and saying, no, these laws only apply to them. Not true. Right? Just like over there it applies to everybody. So too, over here it applies to the entire Jewish nation. Now, comes on the Ramban. The Ramban asks like this. The Ramban says, what's the reason? It says this over here. Why does it say, speak to the children of Israel and tell them, I'm the Lord your God? Well, didn't he say that before? He said it a number of times, I'm the Lord your God. Took you out of Egypt. I'm the Lord your God who took you out to differentiate you from the entire, from the other nations. Right? You're supposed to keep kosher, this, that. Right? He said it already. So why are you bringing it over here? What is so special over here? Even though God speaking to the entire nation and telling them forbidden relationships, very good, but why does God include everybody over here? So he says like this. Ramban says as if to say, what did the Torah say? It said, the Be'er B'nai Yisrael, ve'amart aleim, speak to the Jewish people and tell them, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, right? I am the Lord your God. Now, what is that saying? He says that's if to say, I said to you, right? Amart aleim, right? I said to you, Bishmi Ani Hashem Elokeichem. My name is Hashem Elokeichem. My name is the Lord your God. Now, the Ramban says very interesting, right? That's what it's really saying, as if to say. Now, didn't Moshe Rabbeinu say, he's going to go to Pharaoh, he's going to go to the Jewish people, he's going to say, listen, God of your forefathers, spoke to me, he told me to do this, do that, do the other thing. They're going to say, what's his name? They're going to say, does God have a name? So what does Moshe Rabbeinu answer? He answers, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I will be that which I will be. Now, what does that mean in general? It means God is the same God who's there before a person sins, after a person sins. Right? He's there. Now, again, he may have different feelings towards the person after they sin. Very good. Right? Nonetheless, what happens? what happens? He says, I'm there, when you go into exile. I'm there when I lift you up as a nation, when I make you a great nation. I'm there at all times, right? I'm there at all times, for the good and the bad. He says over here, as if to say, that's my name, right? That's my name, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Because what do we see? We see later in the next chapter, chapter 19, Parshas Kedoshim. What does it say? It says, Kedoshim to you. You shall be holy. Why should you be holy? Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Because the Torah says later, chapter 19, verse 2, the Torah says that God says, I want you to be holy. You should be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Now, what's it talking about over there? Difference of opinion. One opinion says, according to Rashi, it's talking about forbidden relationships, just like for talking about over here. According to the Ramban, no. It's talking about other things, meaning that you shouldn't abuse things, meaning it's permissible to eat, permissible to drink. Doesn't mean you should be a glutton or a drunk, right, or an alcoholic. So you have to use things within reason. Use all the good things God gave you, but within reason. Shouldn't abuse them. Rashi says, no, similar thing over here. It's talking about forbidden relationships. So comes on the Ramban and says, but it says later in the next chapter, you shall be holy, Ken Kadoshim to you, you shall be holy. Why? Ki Kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Very good. Now what's the reason? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu, says the Ramban, when he goes out from God, what does he go out with? Or what does he not have with him? Does not have a covering, facial covering. You have to understand, Moshe Rabbeinu saw God. And he beamed. They couldn't look at him. Right? He had this this unbelievable light coming from him. That's why sometimes see sculptures or whatever, Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's got these beams of light. Right? So, or you'll see sometimes maybe they'll have horns. It's where I guess the idea that Jews have horns, right? Because in the book of Exodus, when it comes down from the mountain, what does it say over there? It says, Karen Oira, right? He's got horns of light. Now, obviously not talking about literally horns, talking about beams of light, seeming like that he glowed. He glowed like a light bulb, right? So what does he do? He had to put something over his face because people couldn't look at him. Right? It was blinding. Right? Very blinding. So he says Ramban, when Moshe came out from God's presence, this time he comes out without a facial covering. And he speaks to the Jewish people as God commanded. Right? So it doesn't need to say, Kol Mar Hashem. Didn't need to say, God said whatever. We already have it over here. Right? We already have it over here because the Spirit spoke to him. Right? He spoke to him. Not that he spoke from himself. Right? That is a mistake people make. That's why many times the Torah says, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moshe. Right? What could we assume in the wrong way? Moshe spoke himself. He made it up as he went along. Right? What exactly this speech between God and Moses? Very good question. Very, very good question. But Moshe understood what God wanted and what he has to give over. But what's the most important thing here to take out? Says the Ramban, you have to understand he didn't speak for himself. Interesting enough, the Jewish people, even though he's the greatest of all, right? He reached the 48th level of understanding, only 49 levels of understanding, so one level of understanding that he didn't have, right? One level of understanding he didn't have. And what does he do? When we read the parshas of the end of the book of Exodus, when we read about the Mishkan, building of the tabernacles, the loops, the clasps, the boards, all these different things. Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu takes an accounting. Takes an accounting of how many there were. Right? There were so many here, so many there, whatever it was. So you could look at this a few ways. You could say, the Torah is emphasizing the numbers, right? Exactly how big it was, and and how many different boards and all that. So that's significant. It's also significant in the fact that why do you have to take an accounting? Why do you have to take an accounting of all this? Because they're going to say he pocketed some of the gold, or some of the silver, or some of the other things, and that made him rich. So even though the greatest, the greatest people, or let's say better, the greatest generation in the history of man, as great as Moshe Rabbeinu was, what do they claim? Or what do they want to make sure? You're not stealing. You're not taking things for himself and his family, or for his friends. You got to say, come on. At this level, what Moshe Rabbeinu's done and the track record that he has, you got to tell me he stole, right? He's filching from God. He's taking things that don't belong to him. I don't know. You got, see all these preachers got, tons of money, right? Taking everything for themselves, right? See other rogue organizations do the same thing, right? Look at Hamas. I'm not going to get into politics. Stole everything. They're higher ups, living like kings in Qatar and other places, right? And the people are supposed to be represented dying like dogs, right? So again, this is the greatest nation in the history of man. The word he stole, pilched, right? Took things that didn't belong to him. Pretty amazing. Yeah. I mean, you see what Korach said, right? We'll get to Korach one day, right? I don't know when, but we'll get there. Very hard to understand. If they saw God face to face in Mount Sinai, whatever that means, first of the 10 Commandments, second 10 Commandments, they died, came back to life, whatever happened, how in the world could he think Moshe Rabbeinu did on himself? Showed favoritism to his brother. Many, many times it says by the Be'er Hashem Moshe Lemor, or by the Be'er Hashem Moshe ve'Aaron Lemor, or sometimes said to Aaron. The God spoke to Aaron, or he spoke to Moshe, or he spoke to both of them. Right? And it's kind of incredulous that you'll say with it's the greatest generation in the history of man. You know what? It shows they're not perfect. That's what it showed. Very hard to understand, though. Simple explanation. Nonetheless, the fact is, says the Ramban, God spoke to Moshe to tell the Jewish people. Meaning, Moshe did not speak himself. He did, in other words, it did not come from him. It came from God. He spoke it over. And we see in many places. We see in the book of Deuteronomy, that's how God speaks. If you surely hear, you'll keep my mitzvahs, Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 13 and 15. Right? You surely hear my mitzvahs that I commanded you on that day. Right? I gave water. I gave rain, let's say better. I gave rain to your lands. I gave grass in your fields. Yeah. What could people have thought? Who did all this? Says the Ramban, Moshe didn't do it. Right? He's not the one that brought the rain. Right on the face of the earth. He's not the one who brought the water, sent the water in the face of the, what's it called? The face of the fields, right? And all that, and all of a sudden grass grew, right? Don't make the mistake and think, he's like the wonder God. He said it and it happened. Well, that'd be beautiful. Yeah, but he's not God, right? Everyone agrees he's not God. But who did it? Says the Ramban. Rather, he says Hashem Yisborach. God, should he be blessed? He's the one who did it. Right? It only comes through Moshe. But God spoke to Moshe telling him this, that, and the other thing. Not that he did it himself. Right? You know what to think. And people shouldn't think he did it himself. So he says, and similarly, person shouldn't think, when they're in the desert, they eat bread, They didn't have wine, right? Any of these things, right? They ate the man, 100%. They ate the man, right? The manna, which we're going to actually learn about this week. Parshas B'Shalach. So they didn't have any of these things. The man fell from heaven. Very good. The manna fell from heaven. In order that what says the Ramban, Laman Teiduki Ani Hashem Elokechem. In order to show, in order for people to understand, I am the Lord your God. I'm the one who did all this. Now, what's the Ramban coming to forewarn over here? The Torah says very clear, right? Over here, verse 2, Daber B'nai Yisrael v'amart alehem, speak to the children of Israel, say to them, Ani Hashem Elokechem. Okay. I am the Lord your God. What might you have thought? First of all, the Ramban says he's only talking to the Kohanim. No, talking to the entire Jewish nation. Very good. All these laws apply to the entire Jewish nation. Very good. But he says, I got another precedent. We see in the next chapter, it says, be holy because I am holy, God says. But what's the mistake people might make? Moshe Rabbeinu is so holy. He comes out from God after speaking to God. He's glowing like a light bulb, right? 100%. He's glowing like a light bulb. Very good, right? He's got a mask, a veil, whatever you want to call it, right? He radiated. He glowed like a light bulb. Very good. So maybe you tell me. Maybe he's God incarnate. Maybe he's so great and he glows. Maybe it's coming from himself. Maybe everything he's saying is coming from himself. Now again, up until everything we've read up until this point, what would we say? How can that be? Because many, many times it says God spoke to Moshe saying, do this, do that, tell the people this, tell them that. Right? But the fact is, he comes out from God. Right? He had to wear this veil. Right? Because he glowed. So maybe you tell me, you didn't need to tell me, go, Mar Hashem, this is what God said. Because many times that's what the Torah says as well. The Lord your God said like this and like this. Okay. But here it says, and it says many, many times, Daber el b'nei Israel, right? By the Daber Shem Moshe Lemur. God spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the Jewish people, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't say, comes God and says this and that. There's a difference in the language. Why is there a difference in the language? There's a difference in the language to tell you Moshe didn't get it from himself. Moshe had to hear it from God. Right? Even the book of Deuteronomy, I don't know if we'll get there, but even in the book of Deuteronomy, right, there's this commentator that says that a lot of the things are repeated. A lot of the mitzvahs are repeated. And whatever, we're not going to, go into it now, but seemingly that Moshe said it himself. Didn't come from God. Moshe said it himself. Don't make him a heretic. But the fact is, he recapitulated a bunch of the mitzvahs. Right? In the last book, the book of Deuteronomy. Wherever he comes out against it, very many come out against it, like, how can that be? How is that possible? He said it himself. Without God dictating what he should do. Or what he should say. Because a lot of times, why are mitzvahs repeated? So, either you tell me, you have a lot of verses. We spoke way back, Parshas Tazria, Parshas Mitzorah, about the Mitzorah. Someone spoke Lashon Hara, got leprosy, or whatever this disease was. You got a lot of information there. A lot of repetition. You got the building of the tabernacle. Again, same thing. A lot of repetition. So some would say, well, it's important. Now you have to understand why it is important. But the Torah doesn't repeat things for no reason. Right? Even the laws of Shabbos, there are only a handful of verses that speak about the laws of Shabbos. Someone doesn't keep Shabbos, a Jew doesn't keep Shabbos, desecrate Shabbos in public, it's got the status of a non-Jew. Can't drink his wine if he touches it. Spiritual cooties, as I would call it, very good. That's like you deny the entire Torah. That's like you deny God. Doesn't say so many verses there. Doesn't tell me a whole chapter of verses. You got verses spread out here and there. You got a handful of verses, right? Other things. You got a handful of verses. Don't kill, don't steal. You don't have tens of thousands, verses. I shouldn't say thousands. You don't have, tens of verses over here, chapters speaking about it. But you do have Tzaras, right? Back in the day, we spoke about it, right? You have a number of chapters speak about it. Tzaras of the body, right? Tzaras of the, of your clothing, Tzaras of your house, a lot of details. So one thing you can say is, well, it's extremely important. Why? So you got to go back and see the verses. You got to go see, why it's so crucial, right? Why the Torah spoke specifically, in detail about some things, and other things that really speak in detail at all. Not to mention things the Torah doesn't mention explicitly, right? Let's say Olam Haba, right? About the next world, Torah doesn't speak about it directly, doesn't mention it. Right, there are hints where it's mentioned, but not mentioned. You can't pinpoint any verse in the Torah itself directly speaks about it. Everything say, yeah, this is what it's referring to. Very good, but when you read it, first glance, it doesn't say that. That's not what it's talking about, right? We're not talking about it directly, let's say. But to think like this is I think an incredulous thing, to think that he said it on his own. Right? What's the Ramban telling you? I got a difference the way things are said. Sometimes it said, Kol Moshe. Here God said, but he says you don't need to say that. Right? Because we're not going to think Moshe said it on himself. Because you got a much clearer language here. God spoke to Moshe saying, period. Say this, do that, whatever. Say over to the Jewish people. Right? But sometimes he uses that language. Sometimes it says, Kol Hashem, right? This is what God said. There's a difference. There's a difference in the language. Very good. But he says, don't make the mistake and think that Moshe Rabbeinu came to it himself. Because then he gives different verses, book of Deuteronomy, when, what do you call it? When it rains and the earth got what it needed from the water, and it irrigated the fields, and we had food and this and that, who did all that? What, you think really Moshe Rabbeinu did it? And it was his power, he did it? Says no. Where did it come from? He says, Ella Hashem Yisborach. Comes from God himself. Right? Don't make the mistake and think he was the wonder God. He wasn't. Very holy. I don't think there's any question. No prophet like him ever after. True. Greatest of all prophets as we understand. But he's not God. Went up to heaven 40 days, 40 nights, didn't eat. Like an angel. Very good. Right? But he's not an angel. He lived in this world. There was a point where he separated from his wife. Because he felt, I speak to God, I have this close relationship to God, how can there be, intimacy, family things, and, this and that, even though he's human, right? So you say on the one hand, he's human, no question, right? He's married, he has kids, right? On the other hand, you see that he went up to the mountain and didn't eat or drink 40 days. And then he went up again after he broke the tablets, another 40 days. Yeah. He'd say it's not normal. Who can do that? Who has that power to do that? So people say, he's like God himself. Nobody's like God. Let's not make that mistake either. Right? The Chosavov says in the beginning of Duty's Heart, he says the gate of unity. The Chosavov there says that there are things we can try and understand about God. And what he does, what he doesn't, what makes him angry, different things. We can learn different attributes. And by God can have contradictory attributes. It's the God of judgment. It's God of mercy. We gotta say, how can God have judgment and mercy at the same time. Right? We'll give one example. The Ramchal says, at the end of Derech Hashem, he says when he speaks about Rosh Hashanah, he says, when you hear the shofar, right? We're talking about making God king. What does he say over there? That even though there's judgment, there can be judgment with mercy. Now, what is hard to understand about that statement? What does judgment with mercy mean? How can you have both? Because you see, when God created the world, what does it say? Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It says, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. God created the heaven and the earth. Very good. What's the name for God over there? Bereshis bara Elokim. Judgment. God of judgment. Right? You don't hear Hashem for a number of chapters. It's an obvious question. Why did God create the world strict judgment? Because that's the way he wanted to create the world. He wanted people to live at a much higher level, according to strict judgment, which some individuals in the world did. You see, they had very hard lives, right? Yaakov Avinu being one of them, wanted to live according to strict justice. Rabbi Akiva being another. But okay, God saw that that's impossible because the whole rest of the world will be destroyed. No one will be able to survive. So he mixed judgment with mercy. You can't have judgment without mercy. Because if you don't have mercy, no one will live. Be impossible. So it says the Ramchal, you have judgment with mercy. How can that be? Right? So I'll give an example. Imagine someone has a fire in their house. Right? Should never happen to anyone, but someone has a fire in their house. Okay. That fire does damage, let's say, to one room. Or partially one room, and smoke damage. No one gets hurt. Only physical things get, some things get ruined, very good, but nobody gets hurt. All right, everyone gets out, whatever, nobody gets hurt. Now, aren't you going to say that's judgment? Fire is judgment. Right? It's definitely judgment. Be judgment for any number of things. So there's a loss here. Even if you have insurance, there's a loss here. Person lost things. Okay. Got to get things fixed, whatever it is. Couldn't have been worse. Whole house could have burned. People could have died. Right? Everybody could have died. Who knows? These fires in LA. What happened? Someone was just there. I just spoke to someone earlier who was there. Interesting enough, Jewish community wasn't really affected. Right? Jewish community's not, necessarily in that area. But yeah, there were people. Some people lost, they had, multiple properties, lost both of them. Lost a number of them. You got Hollywood stars who lost theirs. Some of them. That's true judgment. You can say, okay, nobody died. Right? Let's say, people didn't die from it. They lost everything. And if people did die, it's worse in that sense. The person can say, very good, even though they lost it. And someone told me like 75% of the people have fire insurance. Okay, so they're covered. It's going to take years to rebuild. It's not going to be an overnight thing. To rebuild the whole area is toast. No pun intended. Yeah, it's toast. That's judgment. So you can say, okay, person didn't die, so to speak. They'll get money back to this. So there's mercy. Mercy at the same time. Because the person, not just could have lost everything, could have lost their lives as well, or other loved ones could have died. That's worse. 100% worse. So everyone agrees, or should agree, that's judgment. That is judgment. But there's judgment with mercy. Right? It's not a contradiction. Because you could say, well, could it be a lot worse? 100%. A story many years ago. A person house burned down. He buried 5 or 6 of his kids or more. 6 of his kids died. That's pretty bad. No, not to mention the house burnt down. That's also bad. Well, to lose your whole family or most of your family in the process, that's tragic. Think of it, where's the mercy in that? So you go taking everybody. I mean, there's somewhat of a silver lining. Very hard to find, but be some silver lining there somewhere. But it could be a lot worse. It could be a heck of a lot worse. To have a fire, whatever, is bad, no question. You lose things you can't get back. Also tragic. But what's more tragic? The more tragic is loss of life. It's a lot more tragic. So there's mercy. There is mercy. Sometimes something could happen. It looks, 10 times worse. I was just listening to something recently. And so you look at what happened October 7th. We're not going to get into politics here, but what happened October 7th. And there were a number of miracles that happened, especially in 2 communities. There was one in Tifrach. Tifrach is down south, right, not far from Gaza. There's a very, very strong yeshiva there, about 800 guys. 800 guys going in there. Very hard to get into. Also very prestigious yeshiva. So what happens? So they had plans. Hamas, Yimach Shemon v'Zichron. They blotted out wherever they are. They had plans to take 18 people, 18 terrorists, and they knew, they knew exactly what time they prayed, when everyone's going to be there. They had all this information, and they were going to come in and just wipe everyone out. They're going to be, 2 or 3 people by the door. If anyone tried to escape, they would have killed them. Would have shot them coming out. They would have killed everybody. And plus, the rabbis were there, the wives were there, families were there. Like 1,000 people would be killed, slaughtered. So what happened? They got there. They saw this on video. And now, how do they know exactly what happened? Because they caught one of the terrorists. They caught one of these terrorists. They were there. I think it was with with this. They didn't hear anything. They didn't hear any noise. Usually, it should be very festive. People were dancing. There'd be a lot of noise coming from within. So what happened? They thought they missed it. They didn't bother to go check in on what's going on. They stood outside. They don't hear anything. They left. They went in a different direction. So he interviewed this terrorist. He said, what happened? How come you didn't go in? So he said, we had these plans. We're going to wipe everybody out. Probably 1,000 people we would have killed. We knew exactly what time they prayed. We got there. We were ready. And they didn't hear anything. So they figured everyone went home. Everybody went home. Now, what time did they get there? Why didn't they hear anything? Because there should have been so much noise from all the dancing. So why didn't they hear anything? What happened? What happened was they had to be in the middle of Shemona Esrei. Silent meditation. Nobody talking. Imagine. Nobody talking. So they thought they got there at the wrong time. They missed it. Why they didn't go check it in? I don't know. Whatever. They could have just seen through the window or something. They said, oh, we must have missed it. They went. They caught one of these terrorists. That's what he said. That's one case. Right? There was another case in Ofakim. Also, tremendously strong place for Torah learning. Also very close to the border. And so a similar thing. What were they going to do? They also had at times different things. They were going to burn down the entire place. They were going to burn down the entire place. But what happened as they were there? Again, either they didn't hear something, I forget exactly the story, and instead of going left, they went right. They went in a different direction. That's how they got saved, untouched. Some people say, like, where are all the prayers? Rosh Hashanah, the month of Elul, get Rosh Hashanah, 10 days of repentance, Yom Kippur, the holy days of Sukkot. You're going to say, look, 1,200 people were killed. That's horrific, right? There's no question. They were planning to kill at least 40,000. Now, 40,000 is not even 10% of what they tried to do. And the reasons they didn't go in were stupid reasons. Like, if anybody's anybody, they had half a brain, what would they do? It's too quiet. Something must be going on. Yeah? So send someone in there to scout out the place. See what's going on. They didn't do that. They said, oh, we must have got here too late. And they left. And you can see on the video, right? You see on this video, this rabbi's telling the story. You see on this video, they left. They just picked up and left. They could have killed 1,000 people. Easily. Right? Easily. And the other thing, they went in a different direction for whatever reason. I forget exactly the reason. Right? Also something like, something pretty stupid as well. Right? Oh no, they saw a synagogue on fire. That was it. They saw a synagogue on fire. They figured that was it. They must have killed everybody, so they left. They left. It was the wrong one. I'm going to say coincidence, not coincidence, whatever it is, it was supposed to be a lot worse. Supposed to be a lot worse. Again, still 1,200 people, to be killed in one day is worse. It's the worst tragedy since the Holocaust. I don't think there's any question. I don't think there's any question. At the same time, people say, where was God? What do you mean? You have two very strong communities. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Based on these idiots that, one, they thought everybody left. They didn't bother to check it out. In the other case, they saw the synagogue on fire. They figured that was it. They wiped everybody out and finished. But it was the wrong place. Right? So you can have that. You can say, but, where was God? What do you mean? A lot of miracles. A lot of miracles. Even though it is tragic, not saying not, tremendously tragic. You had, 1,200 people killed, slaughtered, butchered. Yeah. Could have been, they're talking 40,000 people. That was their goal. They could have had an easy time. They could have just wiped out 1,000 one shot. Easily. Right? Even some of them would try to fight back and this and that, or try to escape. They would have killed them on the spot. They would have shot everybody inside, and anyone tried to escape, they would have killed. And 18 people. 18 people for one place. According to the ancient, they all should have been dead. Right? So yeah, it's a tragedy. I don't think there's any question. It's also mercy. But you don't say, oh, where'd the Torah learning go? Where did all the prayers go? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Look what happened over here. Saved thousands of people. These prayers didn't save the other people. Okay. Right? You could ask on that. But if 40, 50,000 people were supposed to be killed, and that was their plans, as they said, if that was their plan and they only got 1,200, okay, 1,200 is still too many. And how many soldiers have died? Also 1,000 soldiers or more. Whatever numbers are. It's also too many. But if you think about it, 40,000, you only lost 2,000. That's okay. You shouldn't have lost any. Shouldn't have lost any. The Brisker Road, someone asked Brisker Road about all the prayers during the, 6-Day War. He says, well, it's supposed to be a lot worse. Right? They were preparing 50,000 people to die at least, right, during the 6-Day War. And only a couple thousand died. Right? So they asked the Brisker Road, it's a miracle. I said, yeah, you can look at it that way. But if we would have done, i.e., the religious people, if we would have been on a higher level and done what we should have done, nobody should have died. You can look at it that way also. Right? But that was the question, where was God during all this? And you see, and there are other stories, it doesn't matter, but these are two stories I just heard today. I was just listening today. You can see certain things I'm like 6 months behind. 6 months behind listening to. But This was it's unbelievable. Unbelievable to hear such a thing. Yeah, let me take some questions here. Somebody mentions that could be the glow and everything been the spirit of Shem filling his lips and his heart, breath of God multiplied. It could be. It could be, but the fact that he almost had stats of being an angel, right? Not eating, not drinking, right? So yeah, so part of that godliness, like, kind of exploded inside of him, so to speak, and made him look like a light bulb, made him glow like a light bulb. Yes, but how that is, good question. Could it be God put himself in, God multiplied inside of him? I don't know. I don't know if it's if it's exactly like that. But the holiness radiated obviously came from God and came from that spiritual level that he was on. Right? Anyone's ever seen someone truly righteous? A Torah giant, they look different. Why do they look different? You'll see they eat, they drink, they make blessings, they do other things very good, but they look different. They have a certain glow, what they call certain fame. How do you translate fame? I'm not sure. Right? It's certain, it's not a glow, but it's a certain thing they give off. They give off of themselves. They don't feel it, but it's because of they exude the holiness, right? They look like they glow. Where's the glowing come from? The Torah that they learned, and they continue to learn, and the levels they continue to grow and work hard at. That's where it comes from. So says Chain is charm. Okay, Carl, that's good definition. All right, we'll take that. All right, someone asked, was name Elohim first appeared when creating the world? Could a strict judgment be the boundaries he put on the great luminaries, the sea, etc.? Not that I know of. The strictness, see, when he created everything, right? He created animals also of mercy. So these boundaries, it's not, I wouldn't say it's strict justice. Per se, he set it up. Right. I don't necessarily I wouldn't necessarily call it strict justice, so to speak. But because those boundaries that he set up, that's never going to change. Not necessarily, I wouldn't say for that. It could be for mercy also, because if you didn't, other things could happen, and God doesn't want to mess around with creation, right? So it could be, that as well. But all, again, all these things, are all programmed. So, it doesn't matter. Right. But, it is interesting. There's a Medrash that says, the Gemara says that, all these things, these inanimate objects, right? We say they don't have free will. They can't do anything outside of what God tells it to do. Now, it's interesting. If you take a tree, right? You take a tree, you cut it down. Now, when you cut down a tree, anyone hear anything besides the saws and hacking at the tree? You don't hear anything, right? Nobody hears any other, extraneous noise except from whatever machinery you are using to cut it down. Whatever it's hacksaws, whatever you're using to cut these down. Very good, right? It says the Medrash. When the tree gets chopped up for whatever it is, for wood, and to be made into paper and other things, the tree screams from the pain. Look what the Medrash says. The tree screams from the pain. Yeah, but, God allows it to happen because God gave us the world. So therefore, we can use the trees for wood and paper and all kinds of other things, right? Make pencils, who knows what, whatever. We can use it. Now, what would happen if we heard the tree scream? First chop, you hear a scream. Yeah, a horrific scream. You ain't chopping that wood. You ain't chopping at that tree. Say, oh, maybe it was my imagination. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's something spicy. I don't know. They heard something. Scream. They're like, okay, yeah, I wonder where it came from. They chop again. They hear it again. worse. Like now they're like getting a little bit spooked out, right? That they're gonna say, was that me? Am I drunk? Like, let me do the test. I'm not drunk. Where's this noise coming from? Like after a few more tries, they hear the tree scream. They ain't chopping that tree, right? But we don't hear it. We absolutely do not hear it, right? We absolutely do not hear it. So that's true. If that's true, so okay, the tree doesn't have a choice. And there are angels guarding these trees, right? Sometimes you have, let's say, an angel of the wind that's going to be more powerful than the angel of the tree, and it could uproot the tree, right? Some angels more powerful, less powerful, whatever it is. They're there to guard the tree, very good, but they can't stop, unless God doesn't want them to. They can't stop man from going around chopping the tree for our usage, because, someone asked, but why does it allow them to suffer? They're inanimate objects, right? They're programmed. They are used for our own ability, right? Animals, same thing. You can ask about animals, better question, right? Why? Someone's going to say, you want to eat, so why should you eat burgers? You should be vegetarian. Because then the Torah say we should only eat fruits and vegetables. And then later it says you should eat meat, right? After the flood, we're allowed to eat meat. Very good. So people say the highest level is to eat fruits and vegetables. Can't eat meat. Because meat came later. Very good. Didn't God see the man wanted to eat meat? So he allowed us to eat meat. Okay. Now, if someone's going to say, which you shouldn't, if someone wants to be a vegan, okay, they can be a vegan. They don't have to eat meat. Right? Okay, you don't get the mitzvah of eating meat on Shabbos or a festival. Okay. If someone takes it too far, which sometimes vegans do, depending on their level, what do they say? They say killing animals for meat is cruel to the animal. That is heresy. That's taking it too far. You want to say, I don't like it, it's too heavy, I don't like the taste of it, this, that. Okay. So you don't get the mitzvah of eating it on a festival, right? Even though we say, ain't simcha ela basa v'yayin, ain't greater joy than eating meat or drinking wine. Person can say, I don't like drinking wine, I don't like eating meat. Okay. So you don't get the mitzvah. But if a person's going to say, I'm not going to eat meat because it's cruel, that is heresy. That 100%. That 100% is heresy. Now, that being the case, are we allowed to eat meat? Yes. It's the way Jewish people ritually slaughter animals. Is it more humane than anyone else? Yes. Why? Very simple. Right? Very, very simple. What's the simple reason? Right? The simple reason is because we are given the ability to rule over animals. Meaning, we could use animals for our own usage. Using them for our own usage does not allow us to abuse them. Okay. So that means ritual slaughter comes and kills the cow. Yeah. It's a big animal, 600-pound cow or more. Right? So you get it down. Ritual slaughter comes in with this very, very sharp knife, hits the trachea, windpipe in one shot. Animal dies instantaneously. How in the world can that be cruel? Now, I saw in South America how they killed afterwards. I just wanted to, see how these non-Jews do it. Now, again, I'm not going to say everywhere it's like this, but like they were hacking these animals like you can't imagine. These animals were suffering like no tomorrow. That is suffering. When an animal dies in a split second, doesn't feel it. Does not feel it. Dies instantaneous. It's not cruelty. Right? Are we allowed to eat the meat? We're allowed to eat it if it's kosher. 100%. Now, eating it, the person can say, I don't like it, I don't enjoy it, but did God give us the ability? Did God give us the ability to do that? And the answer is yes. He knew we wanted to eat meat, so we're allowed to eat it. It's not cruel. If someone says it's cruel to kill animals, that is heresy. You don't like it, you don't like it. Okay. Right? Someone says, how do they slaughter so many chickens in a kosher way? For some places, I would agree, it might be a problem. Maybe there's a nick, whatever. It depends how many you're slaughtering, right? Depends how many you're slaughtering. Sometimes, maybe that's why certain rabbinic supervision, let's say over chickens, they won't eat. Why won't they eat it? For that reason. For exactly that reason. Because they feel, some people will feel that it's impossible to slaughter so many chickens over so much time without there being a nick or a problem or something. Cows, it's easier. Because you're not slaughtering that many, right? You're not slaughtering that many. And even after you slaughter one, you got to check the lungs. You got to cut the animal open. We'll keep this clean, right? A lot of things you have to do in the process before you go on to the next one. Yeah, you don't want it to get mixed up if if the lungs were punctured or something was punctured, right? It makes a treif. For cows, in that sense, are easier. And the reason is, first of all, to be a lot more careful. And second of all, the reason is because you don't have as many, right? You're not, over an 8-hour period, you're not slaughtering, 50 cows or 60 cows, slaughtering a lot less, maybe half, because there's a lot more things you have to do. So that I would say is less of a problem. Well, let's say you're there 5-6 hours and you slaughter 1,000 chickens. That is a lot of chicken. Again, you don't have, just one, maybe you have one person doing it. Yeah, if you have one person doing it, probably save you money, right? For sure. Unless you have, someone else doing it, the person gets, you're not doing it, the entire time either. Right. You wait, you gotta, you can only have so many chickens, in the conveyor belt, and, other things have to happen to it. You cut them open and you're getting rid of some of the insides or whatever. Yeah, but that could be a problem. That definitely could be a problem. Yeah, that if you have too many and you're going at too quick a pace, that could run into issues. That could. That's why some places that slaughter, let's say, a lot, probably it's, it'd be a little bit questionable, right? Again, you'd have to see how it's run and, what goes on there. But the issue is that if you have too many, you can run into problems, right? You can run into problems. Sometimes you get halal meat marked as kosher. Yeah, that's a problem because it's not. They don't do the same thing. People that hold by halal, i.e., the Muslims, will eat kosher. The people who eat kosher will not eat halal. Not the same. Right? Definitely not the same. So animals we are allowed to use them. We are allowed to basically do what we want with them as long as we don't abuse them. If we don't abuse them, that's permissible. Right? Sacrifices people have a problem with. They're going to say, what did this cow do to deserve this? Or what did this sheep or bird, whatever, do to deserve, to be slaughtered on the altar? So that's really not the question. Question is that is used in order to sanctify God's name because that's what God wants. Why does God want it that way? Good question. But that's what God wants. So therefore, we're allowed to. So as long as we don't abuse animals, and abusing animals does not mean I can't use its, skin to make a coat out of. Or, alligator boots, right? Let's say, or how many minks, for fur hats. People say, "Oh, that's cruel." This, that. We're allowed to. That's not being cruel. I don't know, the PETA pet activists, whatever you call them. Yeah, they'll be jumping up and down, but animals are for our usage. Doesn't mean we can abuse them, and that means the person has a pet. You have to feed the pet first, right? There are halachas guarding this. Or guiding, let's say better, guiding this. So as long as we use them in the right way, it's not a problem, right? So it's definitely not a problem. Yeah. So again, even if, right, in this case, back to trees, right? Even if we're going to say about trees that, they scream out, is mankind allowed to use them? We're allowed to use them just because they scream out. You can say, "Oh, that's cruel." First of all, we don't hear it. And second of all, If that would be the case, we wouldn't be allowed to do it. So you find other things to write with. God could have made it so easy to use other things to write on instead of paper, or other things to heat up your house with, and not wood. So God could have put it in people's heads not to use trees. So even if they're going to scream out and this and that, and they let's say they feel the pain. Let's say, is there any command not to do this? There's no command. We're certainly allowed to, regardless of whether they feel the pain or not. And by animals, same thing. You can say, oh, that's cruel. They didn't deserve it, this and that. Not a question of being cruel or not. God made a command. You did this thing. You made this sin, whatever sin it is, right? You have to bring this sin offering. So you have to kill this animal. This animal has to be killed. It's brought to the temple. The Kohen's going to kill it. Very good. Blood will sprinkle all over the place. This, that. Very good. What the animal didn't deserve that? Nothing. But God gave a command. And the command is you want to get atonement. Very good. So you'll get atonement. God allowed you to use the animal to do it. Not only allowed you, he commanded you. So now you can ask on God, why did he command you to do it? Because that's what he wanted. The animal is used in sanctifying God's name. Just like, person sits down on Shabbos, says, it's like meat roast, right? You have a nice meat roast you eat, right? You share it with other people. You're going to say, this cow didn't deserve to be here. The answer is, that cow is being sanctified on your Shabbos table. It's going into your body, make you stronger or whatever. But you're allowed to. That's sanctifying your Shabbos table. I want to say the cow didn't deserve it. There's no question the cow deserved it or not. That's not the question. We're allowed to use animals, for our usage, and there's a command. God said to do it. So again, people say, well, that's cruel. So then a person saying, okay, they know better than God. Right? Reinventing the wheel. God made a direct command. So that's understood why that brings us closer. That's what a korban is. That's what a sacrifice is. We said at the very beginning. All these classes, the book of Leviticus. What's the root of the word korban? Kufresh beis, to draw close. So when a person would bring a sacrifice, draw him closer to God, says the Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Elijah Vilna, more than 250 years ago, almost 300 years ago, the Vilna Gaon said, one thing he wanted to see before he died was what someone looked like before and after they brought a sacrifice. Because he said it can't be they're going to be the same person. Impossible. Why? Because if they see that animal killed in front of them and that was supposed to be them, i.e. a sin offering, how is it possible they're going to be the same person? Or even better, how could they sin again? You gotta bring you gotta take time, bring the animal, right? It's gonna cost you money, it's gonna cost you time. Animal gets slaughtered, this and that should have been you. Regardless of whether you think it's not fair for the animal or not, you should have been toast over here for whatever sin you did. So if that's true, says the Vilna Gaon, how could the person be the same after seeing what happens to this animal and knowing that it was them? That it should have been them. So everyone else in South America, I saw one of these ritual slaughters. I thought, it would make me into a vegetarian. Thank God it didn't. But I tried to imagine through the process, at least one of them, this should have been me. This animal is in place of what I did. And you see what happens to the animal. How are you not affected? What's the answer? Even if you saw it in front of your face, right? What would be the answer to the Vilna Gaon? Because our hearts sometimes are hard as a rock. We don't change. Even if you saw what happened to the animal, regardless it should have been, not been, doesn't matter. How can a person, says the Vilna Gaon, not change? How does it not move them? So if I was there, I would have answered it. I would say because some people's hearts are hard as a rock. That won't change them. That is not going to make a difference in their life. They'll think about it more, maybe. Maybe. Think twice before they do it again. That's worth something, true. When we get lulled into sleep, we forget. So all you have to do is have these visions in your mind at all times, what this animal looks like being slaughtered. Put a little fear of heaven in you. Maybe. Yeah, somebody asked before. It could have been Moses achieved a relationship with Hashem as Adam and Eve before the fall. Ah, interesting. Interesting that he reached such a high level. Yeah, there's only one problem with that. No one reached that level until God gave the Torah on Mount Sinai. So yeah, if you say God gave the Torah and then he went up, yeah, so it could be before the sin of the golden calf, where it brought back the world to where it was, right? Where it was, afterwards. So yeah, so at that point, everybody was at that level. The entire Jewish nation was at the level at Mount Sinai, whatever that means. They were at the level of Adam and Eve before the sin. The way the world was before the sin. It didn't last very long because then you have the sin of the golden calf, right? Shortly thereafter. But at that point, everyone was on that level. Not just Moses. Everyone was on that level. That's mind-boggling. Absolutely, absolutely mind-boggling. But yeah, so you don't have to come on to Moses for that. You can say anybody. Everybody was at that level. At that point. Somebody here mentioned study physiology of plants, and you can confirm that what? They experience stress and pain as they communicate with each other, insects, animals. Yeah, there are a lot of things. It's all been proven, you play music to plants, and has different effects, right? Play, let's say, you play, heavy metal or something, like you kill a plant. You play with, Beethoven or whatever, you open it up, whatever. It has an effect, right? A lot of things, the Rambam brings this out. No one really learns it, but the Rambam seems to bring this out in the Guide for the Perplexed, right? He seems to, speak about that. Yeah, but they're, it is interesting. Definitely interesting that we don't see what goes on behind the scenes, right? We don't see how they interact, what they do, this and that. We don't, right? That's why I always say, if God would at any time open our eyes, right, and show us exactly what's going on in the world, people probably drop dead of a heart attack, right? If they saw what was really going on and how things work. But we don't see it, right? We learn about it, we hear about it, maybe, but we don't see it, right? We don't fathom it, so to speak. So, in that sense, not so bad, right? Because if we did, it would seemingly take away, some free will. But then you could tell me probably not, because what's going to happen? People forget. They won't think about it, and life goes on. Someone asked Adam and Eve, once they had Cain and Abel, ate any meat? No, they were only allowed to eat meat. The command to eat meat was after the flood, so they were only allowed to eat. They weren't allowed to kill animals. Certainly not for food, right? Unless cause them danger or something. But for sake of food, for sure not. Right? So nobody ate meat until after the flood. After the flood, they're allowed to eat meat. You're asking before Cain murdered Abel. Yeah, they weren't allowed to. Interesting, when he brought a sacrifice. That's a good question. 1 second. Because if he did bring a sacrifice, could be he was allowed to kill for the sake of the sacrifice, still wasn't allowed to eat it. Right? Still wasn't allowed to eat it. That's what I would say on that. Someone says a friend who was supervising kashrus of eggs had check like 60 per minute. I guess maybe for blood spots, or some factories run without supervision. Who's checking? Factories are a different issue. Ritual slaughter, someone has to be there. 100%, someone has to be there. You have to have someone watching. right? Ritual slaughter is something totally different. If a factory, someone comes, once a month, once every 2 weeks, once every couple months, what's the reason? The reason is because they have a fear factor. They could come in and inspect at any time. Some of these factories in China, right? Someone was telling me they could lie straight to your face. They don't care, right? So you have to know what questions to ask and what things are going on or whatever. But yeah, there's a fear factor, right? The fear factor is that they're not going to pull a shtick because they don't want to lose money. Because they know they have no idea when you're coming. So if you just show up, random inspection, they have no idea when you're coming. So it's not worth the risk. Some of them might take the risk, but if they find something, they look at the records, different things. They find something awry, they'll finish with them. They won't deal with them. So restaurants need somebody there. Some of the better rabbinic supervision, they have someone there all the time. Now others will have people come in and out for that same reason. It's a fear tactic, right? Fear tactic, meaning they're worried someone's going to just walk in. Very good. Right? That is going to keep them on their toes. Right? A lot of times you're going to say, well, what about surveillance systems? Does that help? So I know by Chol Yisrael, I know Rebbe holds not that way. And the reason is because they can play with the cameras. You can't see everything. If you can say I don't know, multiple cameras, every single angle, you'll never miss something. Maybe. But they can play with cameras also. So there are others that say, yeah, you could rely on it. Others say no, because they can still tamper with it. But when it comes to ritual slaughter, there's going to be someone there on the spot. It's not going to be a question coming in, coming out. Someone's going to be there because there you get a lot more at stake. A lot, no pun intended. You got a lot more at stake over here. So you have to have someone on, there all the time. While you're doing it. You can't have just someone walk in or whatever. That's not good enough. You need somebody there at all times watching everything going on, right? Or a few people, right? It depends how big the production is, right? But because whoever's doing it, they got a lot of money invested here. They have a ton of money invested in, so they don't want any screw ups, and they want to make sure everything is good, right? So it's not going to be enough just to walk in and out. That's not you have to be there, right? Factories are a different issue. Factories, yeah. Someone could come, once a month, once every couple months, whatever, but they're going to be constantly aware of what's going on there, what they're doing there. So, they're not going to want to take any chances. Usually should be, there's a fear tactic, right? That a person can show up anytime. So they have no idea when you're going to show up. You can show up at 3 a.m. one day. Who knows? They have no idea. They have no idea when you're coming in. And you're certainly not going to tell them. You're certainly not going to give them a hint, right? But that's what you're relying on, right? It's an axiomatic principle of kashrus. You're relying on the fact that someone's coming in and out at some point, right? That there's a fear. Someone's going to come in, someone's going to check them. If they find something amiss, that's it, finished, right? 100%. Muslims also believe they're not causing pain to animals. Okay. Yeah, where they get it from? Yeah, they got it from us, right? We check our eggs before we use them. Can you see blood through the shell? Not usually. Not usually. You gotta open them up, put them in, let's say, a glass cup or a paper cup, and you look. You look to see if there's blood spot. The blood spot, you throw it out. But you can't see from the shell. Usually you can't see from the shell. You have to open it. You have to open it. Somebody asks, one second, there's another question here. Yeah, somebody asks, okay, Jewish woman, want a deep understanding of Torah. Very good, multiple levels. How can I study 4 levels of Tanakh, right? Of Torah. Yeah, Pshat, Remesh, Sod, and Drash. Very good. Relative Sefer Vayikra. In fact, I won't make it more difficult. So, I mentioned this before, mentioned again, there are 4 ways to learn. Torah, no question. What we call pshat, simple explanation. Remez is a hint, right? Hints from the Torah. That doesn't mean a simple explanation, but it's like hinted, but it doesn't say it explicitly. Drash means a homiletic interpretation, right? A homiletic interpretation. And so does Kabbalah. So I would say, since the woman doesn't have an obligation to learn anyway, if she wants to, she wants to learn Tanakh, very good, right? So, many schools, keep girls very busy. What do they teach them? Teach them the Torah, teach them Tanakh, and they go through the commentaries. Go through Rashi, go through the Ibn Ezra, go through the Ramban, right? Sometimes Ramban's according to Kabbalah, but whatever. They go, they look at the Ramban, the Malbim, other commentaries. That's very good, right? That's going to give them a much broader way of seeing things. And, sometimes again, it'll be simple explanation, sometimes be more, homiletic, or even hinting, like the Torah doesn't say this explicitly, but there's a hint over there to say like this or like this. Very good. Right? Those three, even for a woman, shouldn't be a problem. Even for a woman wants to learn Midrashim, about the Parshas, different things, very good. Also not a problem. Right? There's a book that women, and it's translated in a number of languages, especially English, that's called Seinu Reina. Right? It's like a medrash on the Torah. So one can read that. It's not a problem. So I would tell you, i.e. Kabbalah, stay away from. Right? Anyone should stay with, man or woman. Right? Unless you have requisite knowledge, which most people don't have. Right? And even if you're over the age of 40, doesn't matter. You need to have a tremendous amount of knowledge to learn it. Right? And that means, we always say you can't run till you learn how to walk or crawl. You can't study higher mathematics, right? I.e., calculus, if you don't learn algebra and trigonometry. Right? So learning Kabbalah is out for everybody. I would say for everybody's out. There are people who told me, I relate to it more and this and that. Okay, whatever. But if you're not based and you're not grounded a lot in Torah, Kabbalah is out. Right? And it should be. It should be. There are people, there are people, online that, go through Kabbalistic things and this and that. Okay, I wouldn't recommend it. Right? Even if they really, really water it down, you feel like you're holding somewhere in the world, I still wouldn't recommend it. Right? My own personal thing. I don't recommend it because the person can't read the owl page. Shouldn't be going to that stuff either. Even if it's very watered down. Right? When I give my classes on Derech Hashem, I didn't speak about it at all. Right? Even if I could have, I didn't. In general. Why? I gave it very simple, but things that people I thought should know. Without Kabbalah. So yeah, Kabbalah should be off limits. To men and women. Totally should be off limits. A person says, I've been learning for 30 years. I know this, I know that. They're well-grounded, very well-grounded in Torah and in spiritual development, i.e. character development. Okay, it's another discussion. Knowledge enough is not enough to learn Kabbalah. You got to be holding somewhere else spiritually. Because it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing for someone to tap into. I get these questions all the time. And my answer would be, the same thing. There's so much to learn. There is so much to learn, in depth. Kabbalah is like, very, very last thing. Very last thing someone should ever touch. Listen, if a person's holding there, they have enough knowledge. Good. Most people, they don't. So, it could seriously harm a person by studying it. So when it says, pretty amazing, Shem shows us another layer, whether in Torah or Tanakh, right? 100%. Right? I remember when I was in South America, so, I gave a class about 3, 4 families, and Hebrew, Spanish, English, back and forth. And a lot of these people got interested in Judaism because there was a Kabbalah center there. So I told them at the end, I was speaking about Passover, and I said, I just wanted to show that the Torah is very deep. I didn't mention one thing about Kabbalah. Some people say, is that a good place to start or draw someone to Torah? That's where they are. Right? I'm not telling someone to do it. I know a friend of mine told me, he's close to 60. He's like, it's time to learn Kabbalah. I'm like, I think it'd be time to learn many, many other things before you learn that. He's never gone through a tractate in his life, never went through Tanakh, I'm sure. can't read Hebrew. Like there are a million things to learn before you get there. So I got to learn it before I die. Okay. That's like trying to learn quantum physics if you never even you barely studied physics in your life. Like, come on, it's apples and oranges. I hear people talk a good game, but like, come on, if you don't have basic knowledge of basic things, why in the world are you studying that? I understand it's more esoteric, it's very deep, it makes you feel like you're somewhere very good. Yeah, but you're not ready for it. You're not ready for it. Even if it's watered down. That's why even by Chabad, they, one of the things they teach, even to non-Jews is Tanya, right? They'll say, you got to learn Tanya, you got to learn Tanya. Very good. Tanya is a very hard book to go through. A very, very hard book. It's a mixture of Hasidus and Kabbalah. It's not the first book I would, if someone's already, learning Hasidus, whatever, they have a certain level of knowledge, okay. It's gone through other things, okay. But like, person just starting out, that's not the book I would start with. Definitely not, definitely not. Yeah. You have to learn the Maharal, you have to learn the Ramchal. I mean, there's a lot of things to learn before you get there. Before you get there. But they're very big that everyone should learn it. Okay. They break it down, they make it very easy. There's that. Okay, it's very complex. Extremely complex. Wouldn't be the first thing I would teach people. So, someone would say, come on, you taught this book Derech Hashem, you're right. They're the basic things I think everyone has to know. How the inclination works. Suffering, spiritual forces, what they do, or potentially they have to do. The purpose of the nations. I think these are important things. No Kabbalah. How they do with Kabbalah? Yeah, these are basic things a person should know. But when you're talking about Hasidus and Kabbalah, it's a different thing, right? It's a different thing. You got to be ready for it. For sure, you have to worry. But, you have to be ready for it. Someone says maybe Hashem shows us or reveals things to us when we're ready. Yeah. So, in other words, I'll tell you, beginning of Nefesh Chaim, famous book by Rav Chaim Volozhin, very hard book to go through. Most people only go through the fourth gate, which talks about the importance of learning Torah. The other gates are very much steeped in Kabbalah, a lot of it. And he said at the very beginning, don't think your actions don't matter. So I'll give one example. I mentioned the example before, right? But I'll mention it again. And that is when you're ready to understand it in a deeper way, right? So let's understand. So he says, oh, you think your actions don't matter, right? He gives a few examples. One of them is, he speaks about eating from the tree of knowledge. And what was the tree of knowledge? It wasn't just a tree, it had all the spiritual worlds inside. So all those spiritual worlds got sort of messed up. We have to try and fix that up, so to speak, by the mitzvahs that we do. Now, before I came on to this, before I saw this Nefesh Chaim, I was saying, people would ask, well, what's the tree of knowledge? What does it bring out? What am I supposed to gain from it? What essentially is it? Well, if you look at it in spiritual terms, as he says, according to Kabbalah, what is it? It's all the spiritual worlds. And all the spiritual worlds got messed up, 10 spiritual worlds, each one being strengthened by the one above it, which is strengthened by what? The Kisei HaKavod, God's heavenly throne. When I saw that, I understood other things, put together certain pieces of a puzzle. But only until I saw that. So I questioned on other things that, over the years never got answered. But when I saw this at whatever level, I was holding that, it solidified certain things, right? But that was only because you had other knowledge. See, if I would have looked at that first, before I had other questions, then I wouldn't have done anything, right? Well, because it would have been something I wasn't ready for. But once you have other pieces put into place, and then you hear something that like solidifies it, you say, oh, so that means like this means like that, you put the whole piece together, very good. Yeah, that's what it means, right? That is what it means. What have you studied, Tanya? Okay, so you studied it, right? I said, I'm not recommending it. If someone studied it, right? I'm just saying, the question is, what's the person going to get out of it? So again, I would assume if they're making it for everybody, that everybody should understand it, they're going to water it down to a point where people can understand it. Because they would speak in lofty terms that it speaks about, no one understands it. Right? The ones who understand it. But to give it over to someone who doesn't understand it, you can't speak in the same terms. You can't use the same language or similar language. And the reason you can't is because no one will understand what you're talking about. You can mention the terms, and then you can say, oh, this one says like this, someone says like that, but what does it really mean? Right? You can very much water it down. You can do that. Give someone like an inkling of what it is, but it's not I'm not saying it's not the essence of what it is, but it's going to be something you're getting at your level. Not at the level the person's teaching. The person's teaching has a different level, understands at a much different level. If someone learned, they learned it. Okay. The Kabbalistic ideas people have heard of, right? Give one example. The Torah says in Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, God says, I want to dwell amongst the Jewish people. Yeah. I want to dwell amongst the Jewish people. And that talks about the beginning of the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. What's the obvious question? The obvious question is, how do you put God in a box? How is it possible to put God in a box? God's infinite. I don't care how big the tabernacle was. You want to tell me it's 3 football fields long? Yeah, 300 meters, 500 meters, whatever it is, 1,000 meters, 1,000,000 meters. Who cares? God can't put in a box. Impossible. So how could God say, I want to dwell amongst you. I want you to put me in this box. I'm going to come down from my place in heaven or wherever God is, right? Because it's everywhere, really, right? So how does it work? He comes through the spiritual world and he puts himself in a box. That's Kabbalah. That's Kabbalah 101. It's called Tzimtzum. How does he constrict himself? How is it possible to force him into a box? It's Kabbalistic concepts, right? Simple explanation makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. God is infinite. An infinite being you can't put in a box. You cannot put him in a box. God's everywhere at the same time. Yeah. If God's everywhere at the same time, there's not a black hole he can't outrun and all these other things. How in the world are you going to constrict him? He's not bound by time or space. Right? He's not bound by anything. If he's not bound by anything, you can't put him in a box. So what's going on? So that's, you can spend a long time going through Kabbalistic works, exactly what that means. Or even better, you don't even come on to that. You go to creation. You go to creation. You could spend the rest of your life on the first verse. Exactly what was going on. So what if that's also a Kabbalistic concept, how it came into being? Yeah, very good. The whole thing of creation is Kabbalah. In general, you learn it to the best of your ability, you move on. Right? Someone who knows Kabbalah, okay, you can spend years going through it. If you have that level of knowledge. There's a lot there. But if you don't have that knowledge, you might get something out of it. You won't get what the real thing is. But you got to remember as well. And that is, I think I forgot to mention, right? The Kosovo says at the beginning, in the gate of unity, he says we can say a lot of different, I spoke about different character traits God can have at the same time, mercy and judgment, but at the same time, no one can understand God's essence, his true essence. He mentioned that a number of times. Impossible. Impossible for a human being to understand God's true essence. Impossible. We can understand certain things about why he gets angry and how it works and how he meets out justice and this and that, but he can't pinpoint when he's going to do it, how he's going to do it, what's going to tick him off even more now, and then he's going to do this and that. We have no idea. We have no idea. That's why by Bilam, evil non-Jewish prophet, he had the ability to calculate. They got to understand who he was also. He had the ability to calculate the split second when God got angry, and that's when he wanted to curse the Jewish people. It's also very hard to understand at his level, as evil as he was. He reached a certain level. Ramban over there speaks about Bilam. I'll get there one day. Said, it said there was no prophet that came out as great as Moshe. Yeah, Bilam was close. In other ways. Right? Okay, he was evil, did other things. Good. Yeah, he wasn't a dummy by any stretch. Right? Anyone who could calculate the split second when God gets angry can't be a dummy. cannot be a dummy. You can ask other things he did and other things he said and why and whatever. Okay, right? Yeah, kind of complex person here. But at the same time, see what he was, see what he was capable of doing. So yeah, there are multiple levels. There are multiple levels a person can look at things. That a person can look at things and understand things, and there are levels they won't understand. So when there are mentions, can we use a highlighter in the simons and sieves? Yes, right. If you're learning a book or whatever, halacha or in Chumash, you can underline things. Yeah, in the Gemara, you can underline things. In the Rashi, Ramban, or whatever. Yeah, certainly could. That's not disgracing the book. That you're allowed to do. Someone says, yeah, but sometimes Gemara and Kabbalah are sprinkled in. That's a different issue. Gemara is one thing. Listen, if you look at any esoteric Gemara, there are many stories. The Gemara tells you can learn it in one. You can learn it. You can learn it in a minute. You can learn it in 5 years. There are certain things that are like, they sprinkled in. Things you look at as very nice story, but like sometimes you see what some of the commentaries say is not so simple, right? Like the Ben Ish Chai, more than 100 years ago, wrote 60, 70 books. One of his books is known for, it's called Ben Yoyada. It's a commentary on these esoteric Gemaras. And, he was giving these over after prayers in the morning to people who prayed by him. So you have to understand who these people were also. Weren't so simple people, because when you go through his commentary, it's either, simple explanation, what's going on, or it's Kabbalah. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. And, yeah, you can have that. But again, it's something that some people are just going to learn it very quickly. They're not going to go in depth. Other people may sit on it a little bit. There's Victor Miller, I think of blessed memory, made a joke, and he said, in all the Gemaras, you have all these what we call agadatim, all these stories interspersed in different tractates. So he asked the question, why aren't they all in one tractate? Why don't you just put them all in one tractate? All the different stories, just put it in one, one tractate. Like Medrash Rabbah or like the Tanchuma, right? Midrash. Just put it in one book. Put it in one book. Says Victor Miller, why didn't they do that? Right? Why didn't Yehuda Nasi do that? Why didn't Judah the Prince organize it that way? Because they said, if you put it in one book, yeshiva guys wouldn't learn it. They wouldn't learn it. It's too esoteric. Yeah, again, I was learning with somebody that was very into these, we call these agaditas. Yeah, so we sat on them a little bit. The Marshal speaks, usually, explains them. We used to look at the Ben Yoyada a little bit. The Maral has a whole, deep explanation on it. Okay, right? You got to cover ground also, but some people just sort of go through it. Okay, you got the point, and whatever. Sometimes exaggeration, sometimes not. Sometimes it's a deeper point. Whatever. But it is part of the Gemara. That's true, right? Now, even if somebody is going, I've done it myself, right? Even if you're going to sprinkle in, some Kabbalistic ideas. First of all, they're not going so in depth. Second of all, you might throw it out there. It's I just mentioned something about the Eitzadas, the tree of knowledge, but we're not going into detail, whatever. I mentioned something that's kind of interesting, right? I do think it's kind of interesting, but okay, someone heard about it. Sometimes things are sprinkled in to explain it. Okay, explaining what the verse means as the Gemara explains it. Okay, so you need that. You need commentaries to explain it. Right? We've seen many times Rashi quote a Gemara, quote a Medrash. To say, this is what it means, or this is what it refers to, in that deep in the person's understanding what it means, right? Right, 100%. But, if person, if you looked at Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, right? Use that as an example. God wants to dwell amongst the Jewish people, right? You see what some of the commentaries are? Yeah, there could be very deep explanations. We mentioned Or Chaim HaKadosh. It also brings, a lot of times, sometimes Kabbalistic ideas, other things. We'll see the Or Chaim probably next week. I'm not going to get to it today. But, a lot of times, And it also brings, more esoteric explanation. Brings simple explanation. A lot of times it brings in a medrash, also to explain. And the last thing he brings in is Kabbalah, right? I haven't seen one in a while, but usually the Kabbalistic aspect, we're not going to go through, but again, it can give a much deeper understanding. That is true without being lost in what is being talked about, right? A medrash, the Gemara, whatever, is one thing to explain something. Kabbalah is a different level. It's a very different level. If a person, let's say, they took Kabbalah, they learned it like a medrash, not getting like the Kabbalistic aspects of it and having to be on a certain level. You learn it like a medrash. There are people that'll do that. Give them another, another explanation of the more esoteric thing. Okay. But that's most people are going to learn Kabbalah, they're learning Kabbalah. They're not looking at it just as a, another interpretation. I remember a great rabbi once told me, it's like, I saw that he had certain by sukkahs, shaking the lulav in different intention while you're shaking the lulav. So I asked, this is many, many years ago. So I asked him, well, it must help, your intention, when you see it and understand it, whatever. And he goes, helps understand everything, right? So if you're on that level, okay, so you see the world in a different way. You're looking at mitzvahs in a different way. Well, most people are not that way, right? So again, these are interesting ideas. These are interesting ideas, make you feel like you're somewhere, but it's not for everyone. And I definitely know there are people that will sprinkle it in. Will definitely sprinkle it in, or even more will, someone a while ago sent me something, sent me a question, and I said, interesting. Let me look around. Let me see. It didn't seem like a normal explanation that I'd seen before. So let me check. Yeah, it was Kabbalah. It's a Kabbalistic explanation. Okay, there are people that will use it to, make things deeper. I don't know, whatever. Again, if someone's going to water it down and, explain it in a way that people can understand it, okay, I probably have less issue with it. It still bothers me, though. For most people, holding nowhere in the world. You're going to say, it's going to draw them, it's going to help them, it's going to, okay, right? Certainly not non-Jews, right? Even secular Jews wouldn't do it necessarily. You can show how deep the Torah is without that. Without that. But there are people, someone's going to say, guaranteed, someone's going to say, but I'm more drawn to that. Okay. There are people who are more drawn to simple explanation. Some people like the word midrash. Some people are into halacha. Some people are into Moshe. Some people others. Okay, a lot of things you have to learn. A lot of things you have to learn. Very good, right? 70 faces to Torah. A person can, focus whatever they want to focus on. You still have to know what to do at a practical level. You want to learn these things on the side or whatever. Okay, that's good. You have to have, I would say you have to have a balance, right? But a person gets lost by it, and and the person who's explaining it doesn't know what they're saying. So the person who listens to it is not going to really understand it either because it's not really clear to them, right? That's when something's very clear. If you can explain something, even, a young kid could understand, that means you grasped it. That means you got it, right? If you're explaining something and, no one's grasping what you're talking about, and there are some people that'll do that. They'll speak at a very high level, and whoever gets it, gets it. Like, what's the point of that? You want people to understand what you're pointing at. It doesn't mean you have to spoon feed them everything, but I don't see necessarily a benefit in that either. Somebody asks, I heard there's a book discussing the laws of Shabbos, and then if you materialize a lamb using Kabbalah, it's parv. There are things you could, you could create, meat in a lab. Yeah, it's not from an animal, right? So that would be parv, right? That would be parv. As far as I understand, there were people that could create a 3-year-old calf or whatever. I think they held that it was didn't have the status of meat, but whatever, could do that. A person could do that. Makes you feel something, if the person's really, steeped into it. But again, I would tell you, it's like playing with fire. Definitely like playing with fire. And again, a lot, as someone points out, a lot of Hasidus is Kabbalah. It is a mixture. It's a mixture. So I would say anyone that's interested in Hasidus, you start with basic works first. And then you work your way through, and then you get to more advanced things. But you don't start the most advanced thing first. That's the point, right? That is the point. Someone says, "I know people so steeped in Kabbalah they're not even Jewish." Yeah, that's a problem. That's whatever. You have that also. You have that also. Get so steeped in it, but they're not. But what is it for them? See, it's not getting them to keep Torah mitzvahs. See, that's the problem. They're interested in it. It's esoteric, makes you feel like you're in another planet, but it doesn't get them necessarily. It gets them interested. Okay. And that's a way to draw someone closer, right? That is a way to draw someone closer. And that's what I tried to prove to these other people, that you can be drawn closer to Torah, even something as esoteric as your ox gored my ox who's liable. You guys say, oh, that's not so interesting. I want to learn about the 10 spiritual worlds of, the Eight Sadas. Right, of the the tree of knowledge. Yeah, very good. But someone, if they have the ability, can make anything interesting. It's a good starter. If that's going to draw somebody, okay, I wouldn't do it. But there are plenty of people that get sucked into that. But what's the purpose? See, it's not about just feeling like you're somewhere. That's not what the purpose of Torah is. The purpose of Torah is to change a person. Purpose of Torah is not to be like, to feel like, you're walking on air, different things. You feel like you're in a high spiritual level without having anything to do with mitzvahs. See, for a Jew, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. That means you're learning Torah like higher mathematics. You're being what Reb Moshe Schneider, my Rebbe's Rebbe, would say is like a former student. That's what you're like. 100% that's what you're like. So that, what does that do with your relationship to God? Doesn't do anything. Makes you feel like you're walking on air. Okay. Does it help you pray? Or just wear an amulet around thinking like you're doing something, right? Or you wear this red string like, Esther or Madonna wants to call herself. You wear that, you think you're holding somewhere in the world. It's garbage. Total garbage. But if you're learning, forget about non-Jews. I'm just talking about Jews here, right? But if a person's learning it and it's not practical to draw close to God, then what's the purpose of you learning it? You're going to say it's an interesting subject. Yeah, a lot of interesting subjects. Yeah. It's an aspect of Judaism. Okay. I wouldn't say it's the most important thing. It's interesting. But what's it going to do for your relationship to you and God? And also, people can learn Gemara and they say, oh, I'm so fascinated. And what does it do? Sharpens your mind and this and that, makes you more analytical. Okay. But what's the whole purpose of learning? We say every day in the Shema, right before the Shema, we say, Le'amod lame lishmor v'lasos. Le'amod, I should learn. Lamed, I should teach if I have the ability. Lishmor, I should guard it. Lasos, I should do it. The whole purpose of learning Torah is to do it, not just to think you're walking on a cloud. If it doesn't draw you close to the Torah, then it's just like mental gymnastics. That's all it is. Yeah, let me see other questions here. Hashem seems to be very overpowered. He put us in a limited physical bodies, right? Yeah, we are limited, but God's not limited by time or space. Spiritual forces are limited by time, not by space. Man is limited by both. We're the only ones limited by both, right? But you see, if you see God's greatness in the world, that's the highest level of fear, because you see, like, how God made the human body. God made a, what do you call it? What's it called? A pit. You put it in the ground, disintegrates, you can't eat it. You break your teeth on it, animal wouldn't eat it. All of a sudden it disintegrates, and then you have apples. You have all these apples. Apple tree, peach tree, this, that. You can see God's greatness, right? No question. You see it even like, during the storm, you hear thunder, lightning, other things, right? You can see it. 100%, you can see it. Someone asked when's the latest time a woman could pray in the morning. I would say before the time you have to pray the afternoon service. So let's say the earliest time to pray the afternoon service is, let's say, 12:30, 12:20, 12:30. whatever it may be, you should pray in the morning before that. If not, then you have to pray that service first, and then you basically, I mean, you have probably, at least according to the Vilna Gaon, you have to probably at least till 10:30 say the Shema and the Shemona Esrei maybe a little bit later. But since since women are bound by time, by mitzvahs, bound by time, obviously it's better they pray earlier, right? But if they can't and they're busy, whatever, they can pray later, right? So they're not bound by time. So you got to ask me, what's the best time as early as possible, right? If not, could you pray later in the morning? Yes. Could you pray up until the time to pray the afternoon service? Yes. Yeah. Let me see other questions here. Some things too hard for someone to accept. Yeah. So some said Abraham really sacrificed Isaac. Yeah, it's all Kabbalah also. Yeah, that he did that. Torah doesn't say that. Okay. Right. But again, there are other things going on at the same time. So it's more esoteric interpretation, right? That's Kabbalah. That he actually really killed him. He died. God put his soul back in him. Right. Other things, going on. Give you another thing. The Torah says when Rivka sees Isaac, sees Yitzchak, she falls off the horse, right? Or she gets startled. Why she gets startled? Because he was in paradise. He was in Gan Eden, right? Everyone was in Gan Eden was upside down. She saw him he's like, how can that be? He's upside down. This is my future husband. He's walking on his head. Yeah. Obviously not simple explanation. Yeah. So a person knows it. They heard about it. Okay. But these are things I would say they're interesting tidbits, and not more than that. Sometimes the person wants to delve more into certain things. Okay. But there are things that, simple explanation, hard to understand. If you read, one of my rabbis, very much Sita Kabbalah once said, you have to have a lot of fear of heaven to read the book Sefer Gilgulim. Never been translated. It's a book on, we go through Tanakh, who is reincarnated into who, and what's really going on. Yeah, what's really going on. So, you see that, whatever. I'm not gonna go into it, but he said if you really see what's going on behind the scenes and who is who and what they represent and what they're trying to fix up from previous generations, if you don't have a lot of fear of heaven, it blow your mind, totally blow your mind. Yeah, let me see any other questions. I'll say, it was burnt up as a sacrifice. Again, I would, I wouldn't let, these type of things, bother someone. You heard about it, you want to look into it more, whatever, but, you move on. These things aren't for most, for most people. You take it for what it is. Better take simple explanation, a little bit in depth, whatever, a person gets out of it. These other things, I've also heard a lot of things that blow a person's mind. Okay. I also move on. I don't, it's interesting. Sure. You get, sometimes what happens, we said before, you have other knowledge and sometimes you have questions and, you're not 100% clear. And then you hear something that solidifies everything. Right. But, that's with other knowledge. Even hearing these things, you're sounds way out. It does. But if you know other things, not so way out, why it would happen that way? Right. But again, it's hard to understand. Right. Definitely, definitely hard. Definitely hard to understand. I'll give one example. One example, you take Noah, right? Noah came out of the flood, out of the flood. What's the first thing he does? Right? Plants a vineyard, right? What's the vineyard? So you could say, it's kind of depressed. The whole world was destroyed. He gets plastered and we see what happens after he got plastered. Okay. Right. But why a vineyard of anything else? Why a vineyard? Because there's an opinion that the Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, was a grapevine. Wasn't necessarily a tree, it was a grapevine. Or it was a tree like a grapevine, whatever it was. So what did he do? He wanted to sanctify it, and he was going to fix up the sin of Adam and Eve and bring the world to where it's supposed to be, and he failed. Yeah, one example. One example. Someone said, Hashem is using this argument with Satan. Jews are sinning, deserve to die. Yeah, but Abraham went against his nature. Yeah, he went against his nature. And what's an answer always? Number of times to Mr. S, the Satan, is self-sacrifice. God can say, look at my people. He'll come out and say, they love me even when, things are hard. Self-sacrifice, huge. Right? It's a huge thing, even if it goes against, everything, that trial went against his nature. So people say, oh, he just believed and he would have killed him anyway. And what kind of belief is that? What kind of person was that? Even though it went against his total nature, everything he believed in. Yeah. God spoke to him. Yeah, but he didn't have any questions. Even when the Satan made a river in front of him, God says, take away this river. If you don't take away this river, I can't do what I'm supposed to do. Right? Gets rid of the river. All impediments. They don't even complain once. They're going to say, because he's brainwashed. I don't know. God brainwashed him. God told him, went against his nature. Totally went against his nature. It's a hard thing to understand. Everything he knows. And guess what? He didn't care. That's what God says. It's what I have to do. God will figure it out a different way. It's not my problem. I have to do what God says. That's what he did, right? So then he goes to sacrifice him. And God, here's an angel, don't sacrifice him. So the Medrash says, he says, let me put a blemish in it, let me do something, let me draw blood. Says, no, it's perfect. It's perfect. Forget about what Kabbalah says, right? That actually died and brought him back to life. No. So let's say he didn't die. Let's say he didn't die. But he says, let me draw blood, let me do something. What's God saying? No. He's perfect as he is, you don't do anything to him. Right? I guess what Kabbalah says. Again, you can learn these things in 5 minutes, or there's a lot to learn here. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Yeah. Any other questions here? Why can I? I don't know. Many non-Jews I know study or learn Kabbalah would rather do. They think they learn Torah, they think they're on a high level. Okay, so what? So let them think that. What does it help them though? It's like mental gymnastics. That's all it is. Is it drawing them closer to God? Is it helping them in their relationship to God? Yes or no? Does it help them keep whatever mitzvahs they're supposed to keep? And no high laws. If it's not doing any of that, then what does it do? It just makes them feel good. It's mental gymnastics. Mental gymnastics is not Torah. That's not what Torah is for. Tell me, looks like Torah, smells like Torah, they're learning a lot. They might be, so what? It doesn't affect them. When Torah doesn't affect you, it's not Torah anymore. It's like, it's like another subject. And when it's another subject, then you're not growing. You just, it feels good. Oh, I learned this, I learned that about, I learned about all these spiritual, like what in the world do you know about spiritual worlds and how they work? Did you ever learn the Ramchal on the topic? Did you ever learn, other Kabbalists on the topic? No. Right? My guess is no. So what do you really know about it? Oh, you gotta tell me what someone explained to you. Okay. Well, that's probably much deeper than what they explain, probably. So what are they really getting out of it? They're getting something. Probably getting something. Feel good about it. Okay. Yeah. But deep down, isn't Torah supposed to change a person? It's supposed to change a person. That's what it's there for. Doesn't a person use a zmanim to know when to pray daily? Yeah, but a woman doesn't. She doesn't need to. She doesn't have an obligation to pray at specific times. Right? She can pray, the way that she wants if she has to. She's not bound by mitzvahs that are bound by time. So she can pray when she wants. The guy's different issue. Right? Sometimes, if he prays later, okay, you get the mitzvah of prayer. You don't get the mitzvah of saying at the right time. Woman doesn't have that obligation. Right? Even if she would know the times, let's say. Make it even better. She knows the times. Okay, but she can't get to it. She's too busy with other things. Does she get married for prayer? Yes. Does she get married for praying at the right time? No, but she doesn't have to. Even if she's not married. Even if she has other mitzvahs to do, it doesn't matter. Or let's say better, she doesn't have any other mitzvahs to do. Doesn't matter. She's not obligated. If she's not obligated, she can pray when she wants. She'll get credit for it. Who says she has to pray at the right time? Right? In the morning. She, She'll pray when she can pray. Should she pray earlier? Yes. Is it better? Yes. And if she doesn't, she still gets credit. She'll get credit. It's not all, it's not all or nothing, certainly by a woman. Someone says I met a guy, is really into Kabbalah. I mean, these stuff, right? Yeah, it's kind of a problem. Yeah, you got problems with people learning and holding by different religion, different things. I mean, some people you got to be careful who you teach. It could be a person you're not allowed to teach, and that's a problem. Then I saw probably okay, there, especially here in Israel, you get a lot of people that are, you got nut jobs here. I think they're the Messiah, I think they're other things and whatever. Like, an individual can do that to a person also. It's the highest level of holiness in the world. But if you don't use it right, or whatever, and cause mental illness also. Torah, we say, can either be exhort of life or kill you. Right? Nothing in between. It's got that kind of power. But you have to use it the right way. If you don't use it the right way, yeah, it's going to be a problem. But anyone who's not using the right way and what they're doing is mental gymnastics. Again, it's not Torah anymore. Makes them feel good. Makes them feel like they're holding somewhere in the world that's beautiful. But like, practically speaking, it's no different than any other abstract thing they're learning. Even the learning with someone who's, quote unquote qualified. What about the Zohar? That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's Kabbalah. That's what Reb Shimon Bar Yochai brought to the world the day he died. Right? Interpreted by the Arizal, the Vilna Gaon. That's what the Zohar is. That literally means the light. Right? That's exactly what Kabbalah is. But a lot of commentaries on it as well. Are converts treated the same when it comes to when they can pray? Well, if they're Jews, they certainly do. Right? A Jewish guy non-Jewish guy converts, he's liable to the same laws as Jews. Got to pray at the right time. All right, if he prays at the wrong time, you get credit, but he won't get credit for saying it at the right time. But yeah, everything that a Jew's obligated to do, a non-Jew's going to be obligated to once they convert, 100%. Yeah, Zohar is exactly Kabbalah. Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Sunday. 4:00 Israel time, 9:00 Eastern time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Malchaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on Q&As, ethics for our fathers, book of Leviticus. Want to send me an email, chaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBI, CHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.